There are moments in tennis when a young player stops being just another name on the draw. Suddenly, the crowd changes, the atmosphere changes, and even the biggest stars on the tour begin to notice. That is exactly what happened with Eala. Because when a player like Coco Gauff, a two-time Grand Slam champion and one of the biggest names in women's tennis, starts talking about the impact of a rising star, people pay attention. But what Coco said about Alex wasn't just another compliment. It revealed something much bigger. Something about Alex's rise. Something about the fans following her. And something about the future of women's tennis. Because Coco Gauff didn't just acknowledge Eala. She acknowledged what Alex is bringing with her. A completely new wave of energy. And suddenly, the question became impossible to ignore. What does Coco Gauff really think about Eala? The answer may be more interesting than anyone expected. Eala's journey to the top has never been a normal one. The Filipina star has been carrying something that very few players on the WTA Tour can understand. She isn't just playing for herself. Every time Alex steps onto the court, she represents a country with a relatively small tennis tradition on the global stage. And with every victory, more people are watching. More Filipinos are watching. More young fans are discovering tennis. And more importantly, they are beginning to believe that someone from their country can actually belong at the highest level of the sport. That transformation became impossible to ignore in 2026. At Indian Wells, Alex faced Coco Gauff in a match that quickly became one of the most talked about moments of her season. Alex eventually advanced after Coco was forced to retire with a left arm injury. But what happened afterward showed the kind of person Alex was becoming. Instead of simply celebrating her victory, Alex used her on-court interview to recognize Coco. She called Coco an amazing competitor and an amazing role model. That moment said a lot, because Alex wasn't looking at Coco as someone standing in her way. She was looking at her as someone who had helped create the path Alex was now walking. And that relationship between the two became even more interesting when you look back at what Coco herself had said earlier. Their story had already taken another turn in Dubai. Alex's popularity was becoming impossible to miss. The crowds were getting louder. The support around her was growing. And even when Coco found herself playing in front of fans who were clearly supporting Alex, Coco didn't complain. Instead, she recognized something that many people in tennis sometimes forget. Passion is good for the sport. Coco openly acknowledged the energy Alex was bringing into the stadium. She even thanked Alex for bringing a new demographic to tennis. Think about that for a moment. Coco Gauff didn't look at Alex's growing popularity as a threat. She saw it as something positive, something that could help women's tennis grow. And that is where the story starts to become bigger than Coco and Alex. Because Eala's rise isn't just about winning matches. It's about changing who watches those matches. It's about creating new fans. It's about making people in the Philippines feel connected to a sport in a way they may never have felt before. And Coco Gauff understood that. But then came Wimbledon, and Alex's story reached another level. The player who had already shocked the tennis world in Miami in 2025 by defeating Iga Swiatek had another opportunity to make history. This time, the stage was even bigger. Center court, Wimbledon, and across the net was the defending champion, Iga Swiatek. The pressure was enormous. But Alex didn't play like someone who was supposed to be intimidated. She played like someone who believed she belonged. And then she did it. Eala defeated Iga Swiatek. She reached the fourth round of Wimbledon. And, more importantly, she became the first Filipino player to reach the second week of a Grand Slam. Suddenly, the conversation around Alex changed completely. This was no longer just a promising young player. This was a player making history. And while Alex was making history on the court, the connection to Coco Gauff became even more interesting. Because Coco had already seen something in Alex that many others were only beginning to understand. The personality, the confidence, the ability to connect with fans, and the courage to compete against the biggest names in the sport. Alex had now beaten some of the biggest stars in women's tennis. And she wasn't doing it quietly. She was becoming one of the most recognizable young faces of the next generation. But perhaps the most fascinating part is that Coco and Alex don't represent two completely different worlds. In many ways, they represent the same future. A future where women's tennis is not dominated by just a handful of established stars. A future where new audiences can come into the sport through players they feel personally connected to. And a future where young athletes from countries without a traditional tennis powerhouse can suddenly become global stars. That is why Coco's comments about Alex mattered. It wasn't simply about one player praising another. It was about one established star recognizing the impact of someone who could become one of the sport's next major stars. And that makes the title of this story even more interesting. Because when we ask what Coco Gauff really thinks about Alex Eala, the answer isn't that Coco is afraid of her. It isn't that there is some secret rivalry between them. And it isn't that Coco sees Alex as just another opponent. The truth is actually more powerful. Coco appears to understand what Alex represents. A new generation, a new audience, and a new energy entering women's tennis. But there is one thing that makes the story even more exciting. At some point, admiration has to disappear once the match begins. Because no matter how much respect exists between two players, tennis is still tennis. When Coco Gauff stands across the net from Alex Eala, there can only be one winner. And that is where the story could become personal. Not because of bad blood. Not because of controversy, but because of ambition. Alex wants to become one of the best players in the world. Coco already is one of them. And every time they meet, Alex gets another chance to prove how far she has come. That is what makes their story so fascinating. Coco has already acknowledged the impact Alex is having. Alex has already shown respect for Coco's journey. But eventually, the student and the established star may find themselves fighting for the same trophies. And when that happens, the respect will still be there. The friendship may still be there. But the competition, that will be very real. Because Alex Eala is no longer just the young player people are excited to watch. She is becoming the player people expect to watch. And that is a completely different level of pressure. At Wimbledon, Alex showed the world that her breakthrough in Miami was not a fluke. Her victory over Iga Swiatek proved that she can perform on the biggest stages. Her growing fan base proved that she can bring new people into tennis. And Coco Gauff's own words showed that even established stars are noticing the effect. So maybe the real story isn't what Coco thinks about Alex. Maybe the real story is what happens when two players from the new generation begin moving toward the same destination. Coco Gauff has already become a Grand Slam champion. Alex Eala is still chasing her first. But if the last few years have taught us anything, it is that tennis can change very quickly. One victory can change a career. One tournament can create a superstar. And one young player can suddenly make millions of people believe that anything is possible. Alex Eala is living that transformation right now. And Coco Gauff? She may already understand exactly what is happening. Because sometimes, the biggest sign that a young player has arrived isn't winning a title. It's when the established stars start talking about the impact you're having. Alex Eala has reached that moment. The question now isn't whether she belongs. The question is how far she can go. And perhaps the next time Coco Gauff and Alex Eala meet, the world won't be watching a rising star against an established champion. It will be watching two stars of the next era. And that is when this story could truly get personal.